It is very hot now on the Kupinsk direction, but should we panic? After the Russian troops completed the regrouping of the units of the West Troop Group responsible for this location, and reinforced the units of the 79th Motorized Rifle and 11th Tank Regiments in the Kupinsk direction, the process of increased pressure on the positions of the Ukrainian defense forces began. The total number of the grouping of troops west today is about 65,000 personnel, but how much of the equipment corresponds to the possibilities of offensive actions? There are 700 tanks instead of 890, just over 1,000 armored fighting vehicles instead of 2,670, 650 barrel artillery instead of 970, and MLRS, 200 units. As we can see, this is not the worst understaffing among all enemy occupation groups. But it still limits the ability to effectively break through the AFU's defense lines and advance deep into the territories. This factor explains why, having launched the Liman-Kupinsk Axis offensive at the end of May and the beginning of June, the Russians have not achieved any significant result for 6 months. At the same time, since October they have been sending the most combat-ready resources to Avdiivka, from the center group of troops, which suggests that if Russian troops are unable to encircle and capture Avdiivka before the new year, then after the new year they will have to pull resources from other groups of troops. For example, from the Kupinsk direction, because the Russian command does not have many options. Briefly on the situation on the left bank. The enemy units, which tried to displace the Ukrainian defense forces southwest of Krinky, had a mass annihilation of personnel and equipment. The enemy command still cannot find an optimal solution to the problem of the left bank, where the AFU control is expanding. And while everyone's attention is focused on Krinky, where Russian equipment is burning non-stop, interesting and very strange things are taking place somewhat to the west. Therefore the enemy continues to transfer forces and means to the Kherson region to reinforce the Dnipro group of troops. They are transferred at the expense of the resource of the groups Zaporizhia and defense of Crimea. As of today the group Dnipro exceeds 70,000 personnel. Let me remind you that a little more than 2 weeks ago, it was a group of troops slightly more than 65,000. In addition, it has about 380 tanks, up to 1,000 armored fighting vehicles, 500 artillery barrels and less than 100 MLRS. That is in terms of equipment. The complement of this group is from 30% to 40%. And if there is an increase in the amount of biomass, there are no qualitative changes in equipment. Also west of Olishki, the enemy forces took the defense. Perhaps this is due to those interesting and very strange cases I mentioned earlier, and perhaps not, but the fact of restless digging was noted. From this we can draw a simple conclusion that the restlessness in the ranks of the command of the Dnipro group is spreading along the greater and greater extent of the left bank. And it is not surprising, because practically all those sections we mentioned above have extremely limited logistics, the cutting of which is fatal for the Russian troops.